Hello and welcome back to my channel. In this video, we'll be taking a look at a few tips and tricks on how to improve your programming speed and efficiency. First of all, each mod should have this little method in their main class, which just creates a resource location of the mod's mod ID with the given path, which can heavily reduce the effort you have to take to create resource locations, especially after the change of 1.20.1 merging to 47.4.0, where new resource location was replaced by resource location from namespace and path. So you would have to do this in every single location, and in this case, you would only need to do it in one. This can be very useful. Now, first of all, most of you will have seen the tutorial from Cope and Joe. If not, I will be linking it in the description. So you can, if you hover over the lines on the left, you will see that there's like this marker marks a red dot. And if you start your Minecraft game or the run client task in debug mode, we can just do that for a second quickly. You will see, after it has loaded, you will see that as soon as the game attempts to execute this line, before this line is executed, note that it is before this line is executed, it will halt the game and show everything that's available, in this case all the local variables, including this, it's a constructor, and all the local variables, in this case that will only be in the mod event bus, will be here, and you can just take a look at everything that is in here. In this case, this has nothing to display, but this has a lot of stuff, like the amount of listeners that is available in here. That would be only the registries or more. And you can also evaluate expressions up here. For example, math.how 2 to the power of 10, that should be 124.0. And you can do a lot more with this. For example, check if conditions are met, if they're pure, that is. And you can also modify some stuff. For example, mod event bus dot register. You can modify variables with this. Now, this is already very powerful, as you can see all the variables and check if they are anything off with them as they are supposed to. But of course, you can do more about that. This one is not very helpful in this case. We'll be taking a look at something a little bit more, well, uncommon, I would say. For example, you have multiple, you want to register multiple items. Let's say, for example, there's an issue with an advancement you programmed and it does not show anything in the logs, but you really want to find out what is going on. So you can just put a breakpoint in the recipe manager that here this method reloads all the recipes, and you can now just take a look in here, and if you right-click on the if you right-click on the line on the breakpoint you set, so if you set the right-click, it will set you to the condition field. Now you can define a condition that also can include any local variable present at the time this breakpoint is executed, so directly between this line and this line. So we are trying to check if the resource location is equal or equals a new resource location, for example, arrow. So now it should, can I make this a little bit larger? No. Now if we start the game, it will, well, the recipe manager loads after the game, after you enter world, so that is a little unfortunate, but we can live with this. You will notice that although there's a for loop in here that iterates over every single registered recipe in the game, it will only halt once for the arrow recipe. We can check that easily with another, well, another debug pointer here. As you can see, the object hash map we are currently in the iteration of, as you can see, iterating over the entry set of the map, has 1,174 elements. There's 1,174 recipes. That's a little bit much. And as you can see, a normal breakpoint would go over every single one of them and until you find the one you want to check for, in this case the arrow, vanilla arrow one. We are currently at yellow dye from dandelion. It will take some time, especially if you get into some of them that are very late in the map. So the conditional breakpoint ensures only if the condition is met, this breakpoint will actually activate and pause the game. So you can take a look at the JSON, in this case, for the recipe. In this case, it's a crafting shape recipe of category equipment with key rods, wooden rods, flint and feather. Pattern is X #Y, and the result is 4 arrows, and you can show a notification. You could theoretically change something about that, but we do not want to, so that is 2 of the breakpoint details. Moreover, if you have an exception that is raised somewhere, we're just going to start this normally for now. As you can see, there was an error loading mods. One error has occurred during loading. And then you can take a look at this. You can see that if an exception is raised, you can see this create breakpoint GUI here. If you click on it, it will say it will add a Java exception breakpoint, so you can also condition it. But in this case, we do not want the exception breakpoint. There's also another way of doing this. You can go to run, view breakpoints, then go to Java, click on add Java exception breakpoint for Java. What was exactly illegal state exception? All right, we want a new exception, illegal state exception, and this should notify us for both caught and uncaught exceptions in this case. And now if we close this and rerun in debug mode, first of all, it will stop at any other illegal state exception that is thrown, which is a little bit unfortunate because that happens a lot of times, which is silently ignored in the beginning. Illegal state exception is a very bad example for this because it's used in so many bloody cases. Let's use a JSON, I don't know, pass exception, and then we modify. You can also use Control-Shift-F8 to get directly to this UI, and we can remove this. So we want a new JSON parse exception. Nice. Then we click done, and also what we'll get next to after I've done this, we can continue. And as you can see, as the exception is raised, the exception breakpoint breaks the program and halts, so you can see what actually caused this crash. In this case, it's just a thrown new JSON pass exception, but for example, in null pointer exceptions, you can see why it was null. You can also see the detail message, so you can debug a little bit better. And this is especially useful if you have some random crash, you can't really figure out why it happens. You just add a exception breakpoint and it will show you what happened. Now, besides using breakpoints to enhance your programming quality, there's also a few websites which can help you, especially using data. Now, we have Linkie. This is the start page. You can toggle light and dark mode over there. You can go to mappings, and then you can select your mapping over here. Commonly, you would just use well, in this case, for my purposes, Forge Mojang via SRG is the correct one. But you can use, of course, use Fabric or Yarn mappings. Now, this is first of all able to convert this cryptic obfuscated method field and class names back to their, well, def environment names. In this case, method 253200 is vertex buffer hashtag draw with shader, and it is also able to translate to another namespace, for example, or another version, which can also be very helpful. Now, this translation is currently translating to for example, we want to merge it to yarn. We can see that vertex buffer draw with shader is just in yarn, it's just vertex buffer draw. And for example, we have villager hashtag notify. I don't know, it was tell. Yeah, exactly. The method from Dr. Rat's video. As you can see, that's basically the same thing. That's also what he used. Villager to tell witnesses that I was murdered translates to villager to notify that. So it can be a very helpful tool if you want to translate, for example, a Fabric mod to Forge or the other way around. For example, if someone was to tell witnesses that I was murdered on Forge, you knew that villager entity.notify death would be the correct translation of this. Now, Linkie is already very powerful, but if you are looking to create recipes, advancements, loot tables, or some other kind of world gen, also including enchantments, you can, for example, go to all the data pack generators, which is actually a lot more than I remember to have seen. Damn. Jukebox song, starting at 1.21. Item modifier, instrument tag. Damn, I didn't even know all of these existed. What? Text component. What? And like all of these can be very helpful, but most commonly used enchantment for 1.21. Well, damage type probably. Block states are commonly used with data generation, so you don't really need this. Advancement. Loot table, and like as you can see, like popular generators, loot table, advancement, recipe, and world gen generators, also enchantment generator. So when you go into these generators, for example, let's take a look at that recipe generator. You will see that you can select one of every vanilla recipe type. For example, let's say we have a, where is it? Shaped crafting. Group is equipment. Category is equipment. Pattern is empty space x empty space star empty space star and star empty space star. Now you can define keys, and for example, this case we need a key for x because we have one key defined here, and the item is Minecraft string, and you also need to add the star. Item is Minecraft feather. As you can see, this is the recipe as it should be, and the result you can set Minecraft Elytra. You can also set components of this item for 1.21, but we actually want to have it set to 1.20. Okay, for some reason that is not currently showing in 1.20. That's fine, I guess. And now you can define the result. In this case, Minecraft:Elytra. Currently, this thing seems a little bit broken. Anyways, count defaults to 1. Show notification. Nice. And now you can copy this, but as it perfectly matches the next thing I wanted to talk about, we'll not be directly copying it over. Next, we are going to run client. Well, debug mode is not very important, but we are still going to run it in debug mode. As you may have already noticed a few seconds ago, if you a certain plugin, the single hotswap plugin allows for single classes to hotswap instead of the entire project, which can heavily reduce reload time and also well, bugs with that system, because for some reason it did not appear to be working for me. So this one is working. So if you like modify a class while the game is running, you can just press this button and it will reload the class and update any change you make. Note that changing a method signature, like removing, adding parameters, renaming it, anything like that, adding or removing a field, adding or removing constructors or something, will only work with the correct JDK, which should be from JetBrains. I don't know if these are installed here. So it is not. It's a little unfortunate. But for normal JDKs, you would not be able to do this. So only modify something inside of methods, like bytecode inside of methods. Now, as the game is loaded, now after we have loaded into the world, we take a string and a few feathers and a crafting table. And if you try to do it now, as you may have noticed, I didn't yet add the recipe, it will not work as expected. Now, after we copied this recipe, we can now go into resources, assets, models, no, not models, nope, not assets actually, I'm tired probably. New directory recipe, and we add new file, elytra.json. If I'm not mistaken, I'll take a look at this real quick. Nope, nope. As Minecraft likes to modify this, it is recipes, plural. Now, after we have added this recipe, if you go back into the game, you will notice that that is the wrong order, is still not available. What you have to do now is go to the Gradle tasks, go to Other, and run the Process Resources task. Wait a few seconds for this task to complete. Now, this has added the file back to oh yeah, it's the wrong folder. Whoopsies, whoopsies, yet again. So if we have it under the correct folder, data tutorial mod recipes, elytra.json, it should now appear in the tutorial mod recipes folder, and you can find recipes elytra. Now this is here. Still, it does not show up. What you have to do now is go to the commands, type in data peg, then disable, and then call mod tutorial mod to disable the data pack, and now re-enable the data pack, enable mod tutorial mod, and if everything worked correctly, you can also take a look at the logs. Not all defined tags here, but that should still be working. And if you put the string here, we can now craft the lighter. So hot swapping resources directly from your history. Now, of course, you can also do this using assets, but for this we'll take a look at data generation. If we have it set up already, please. No. Okay. Well, that's a little unfortunate. Mod item models provider extends item model provider. Nice. Implement methods, register models, create constructor makes things super. This mod ID is Misocraft. Oh, not Misocraft, that's another mod. Nope, tutorial mod ID. Well, I've been programming Misocraft a few last few days. We can now this dot sim. Oh, recopy of a file was real quick. Now these two methods are just to create simple items. And in this case, we'll be taking simple item, or rather, yeah, well, simple item mod items dot wizard hat. Well, this is the registry object. The item and the texture is just new resource location using items slash diamond helmet as an example texture. Now we can go to the data gener. Nice, and add the generated add provider. Running it true because you do it for both. But anyways, new mod item models provider, entering the output and the helper. Now we can run data, wait for this task to complete. Also note that each single Gradle task will run process resources by itself when running, so you don't need to do it if you don't have any changes. And if we take, well, if we take the wizard, if we give ourselves the wizard hat, it still has no model or item. But we can now do, well, first of all, we need to process the resources again. Bonk. 1 second. Processing resources. Nice. If you go into resources, assets, tutorial mod, models, item. Never mind then. The fuck is Jesus Christ. Generated assets, tutorial mod, models, item. Why would you not process resources? You are not up to date. Oh, I'm just blind. I am just blind. All right. Now, if the model has successfully been transferred over to the build resources and then the path, well, main assets path, you can then press F3 and T to reload the resources. And as you can see, now it's in my hand. It's a little bit weird. Anyways, it works now. And now, for the last thing, something that can be a little bit helpful, well, it's a little bit funny, not very helpful for most people, is startup messages and progress bars. Now, they do not do anything, really, besides that they look a little bit fancy when loading the game. So if you have something that takes a lot of effort, for example, like heavy file I/O or something, having to access some server for some information, you can put a progress meter on the screen and tell the game that it's currently downloading stuff. So if we go to run client with this, all of this enabled, we do not need to debug it. This would only cause the game to take even longer. Now, this needs to be visible. Thank you. If you take a look at the Minecraft loading screen, after a certain amount of time, it will then start like showing the progress meter for counting, which just goes up and up and up and up. I've set it to a maximum value of 2.1 billion. That is probably correct. Yep. So this may take some time. Of course, you shouldn't set it to this value in normal programming reasons. Set it to the value that is necessary. For example, the amount of bytes a file has. And now, after it has completed, it will continue to load as it was supposed to. You can also add mod messages. These are those little messages that appear on the bottom left of the screen. This had also a message that was instantly consumed by other messages running above. I hope this little bit tired tutorial helped you understand a little bit more about programming and how to make it more efficient. And yeah, like and subscribe if you haven't done so already. Have a great day.